All right. So welcome to the January 2024 Access to Justice Board meeting. Nice to see some familiar faces, some new faces, new names. So why don't we start off with introductions? If you are new to us, then and you could either unmute and introduce yourself or put your introduction in the chat, depending on what you would like to do. I will start off. I am not new. I'm Terry Price. I'm the chair, but I would like to start off by introducing our newest board member who was affirmed by the Supreme Court very early in the month of January, and that is Citlali Breseño. So welcome to Citlali. She will be online in a second. Christina.
No, I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Oh.
Technical failure. Sorry. I wanted to do a yay, congratulations. And, yeah, too early in the day for emojis. Not sure. Sorry.
There we go. Okay. So do we have folks who are new to us who would like to introduce themselves? Sarah Augustine, good to see you. Chair of the Equitable Access to the Appellate Courts Working Group. Okay. Other new folks?
Hi, I'm Rory Hardy. I'm on the Practice of Law Board, and I'm here with Michael Terasaki. I'm a paralegal at the Attorney General's Office. I'm also a Triple T, and I'm here just to see what this is about.
Excellent. Welcome. We're very happy to have you. I see Aaron has put in the chat Juan Carlos Guzmán-Baigés. I'm not sure that I...
Yes.
Oh, okay. So welcome. We will come back to you in a second because you're on the agenda. All right. All right. Then we are going to proceed to the minutes from the last meeting. They are in the materials. So can I get a motion from the board to approve the minutes? Vanna, I see Vanna. Can I get a second from the board to approve the minutes? Mike, see Mike. All ATJ board members who are adopting the minute, approving the minutes, aye or raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I'm actually going to mark myself as abstaining since I missed the public meeting last time, but otherwise it passes unanimously. So before we move on, Citlali is the new ATJ board member. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Citlali Breseño. I'm currently the program director at MIA Mujeres in Action. We serve survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault out here in Spokane.
Thank you, and we are very happy to have you. All right. So next on the agenda is Juan Carlos Guzmán-Baigés.
Hello, everyone. I am Juan Carlos Guzmán-Baigés. I use he, him, él pronouns. Thank you so much for the invitation and for allowing me to share space with you all today. I recently joined Just Lead Washington several months ago as the new executive director. I'm glad to see alumni partners from our organization on this call. So very happy to be in space with you. It's extremely exciting to be connecting with the Access to Justice community here in Washington. I really appreciate the opportunity to do that. We are very excited about the year ahead, continue to build and to grow a community of leaders that are committed to justice, anti-racism, and anti-oppression. Just to share a little bit before I stop, we're launching our signature program next month. It's our first all BIPOC cohort that are going to be going through a series of trainings to enhance their leadership skills and all connected to equity and anti-racism. I'll be joining that cohort next month as well. So very excited about my own journey and supporting a new group of fellows and leaders from across Washington. Again, happy to be here with you all. Looking forward to continue to collaborate with our community, and I'll share my contact information in the chat to make sure that we can stay connected. Thank you so much for the time.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. Any questions for Juan Carlos? All right, sounds very exciting. What's coming up? And he just put his contact information in the chat. All right, next on our agenda is our revised Hallmarks adoption. So as most people here know, and I see Jenny Pratt has worked over the last year with various communities around Washington to re-examine the Hallmarks and update them. And we have had them presented here and in the Delivery Systems Committee. So now is our opportunity for the board to vote on their adoption. Are there any questions about the updated Hallmarks before we take a vote? Is there anything, Jenny, you would like to add, given all your work on them?
No, I am happy that they're coming before you all for consideration. There was some discussion about centered around accountability measures, and so we've developed a document that will drop in to that final report. So when you begin work on your state plan, there are some suggestions there centered around the current Hallmarks.
Okay, great. That's
you.
super. Thank you. Thank you for all your work on this. So, Bonnie, do I need a motion, or is this considered coming from a committee?
It came from the Delivery System Committee. So
All right.
no motion needed.
No motion needed. So, all right. Access to Justice Board members who are in favor of these new revised Hallmarks, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Silali opposed or abstaining? No. So it looks, Nick, your hand is up, or no?
It just stayed up. I was.
Oh. Okay, so it looks like the Hallmarks pass unanimously. Thank you again. Thank you, Jenny. All right. Next on our agenda is an update about the ATJ Board stipends policy. So Vanna, I think because Jeremiah is not here, that was who I was trying to remember, and Esperanza is not here. Vanna, do you have an update on the policy?
Well, Diana might be able
Sure,
to.
I'm happy to kick things off, and Vanna, please jump in. So yes, as folks may know from previous ATJ board meetings, we have had a work group working on drafting a policy on paying people with lived experience of systemic oppression. And our work group are Vanna, Jeremiah, SB, yes, and then I'm supporting them. what we have done in terms of informing the policy before really just jumping into drafting something was to get input from the community, and the community meaning both the legal community and folks with lived experience. So you may remember we sent out a survey last November, as broadly as we could, and that was an online survey. We got about 300 people who responded, which is pretty cool, I think, especially given the time of the year, and we all get way too many surveys. So we got a lot of really rich information. We have about 50 of the people identified as not a member of the Bar Association. So presume that many of those folks are folks from outside of the legal community, and then also they identified their different lived experiences. So our goal was, we did have an ambitious timeline for drafting the policy informed by this input, and then seeking input from obviously the Access to Justice Board itself, but then others as well, with the goal of ultimately submitting it to the WSBA, the Washington State Bar Association's Board of Governors, as a WSBA policy. And if folks might remember back last summer, the ATJ Board had planned on submitting to the WSBA a budget request to pay for stipends for board members with lived experience, and the WSBA said it would be helpful if we could have a policy first before putting that in the budget. And so the board decided that that's why, and sorry, I'm kind of going a little backwards. That's why we've been working on the policy that would not only apply to the ATJ Board as an entity that the WSBA provides funding for, but really any entity as part of the WSBA. So, and that is why it's really crucial that with the draft policy, we get plenty of feedback and offer opportunities for people to give their input. So, so our timeline was to try and match it up with the bar's budgeting planning season, so that the policy could ideally be put in place before the bar would consider its budget for next year. And that with timing would land us around needing to have something fully formed, fully vetted by May. The working group, Vanna, Jeremiah, SB, and I, when we saw how much input and perspectives that we got from that survey, we realized the timeline did not seem realistic if we were going to seriously consider all the input that we received. And the reason being, one, the input we received, a lot of it was, if you want people with lived experience to join and be a part of your different work that you're doing in the legal system, paying a stipend can't just be the only thing. You need to consider a lot of other things to make that work accessible. So that's one thing we realized. And the other is, we had a great turnout of the survey, almost 300 people. That was an online survey for people who use computers or looking at their computer, getting emails. And so we also want to do additional outreach in other ways to the community to make sure to get their perspective before we jump into drafting and then following this ambitious timeline. So we had concluded that we want to do it right rather than try and rush something through. And the hope is that by slowing down and doing it right, we will have a better sort of product at the end that hopefully can be something that there'll be buy-in and also ideally approval by the Board of Governors, and also can serve as a model or example that other organizations, whether in the Alliance or other ATJ commissions across the country who are also thinking about this, can look to. So I will pause and see, Vanna, if you have other things that you want to add.
I don't, but I think Bryn was involved too. Were you involved, Bryn?
Yes, I have been, although I switched over since I'm
Oh
working
yeah,
with
that's
civil legal
right.
needs.
I
Yeah,
forgot.
yeah, thank you.
Sorry. No, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you, Vanna and Diana, for your work on this. I will just add that when we were meeting, when the ATJ board had its annual meeting last week with the Board of Governors, we stressed that this was an important policy to go forward. And we stressed to them the role that community should play and can play in the work that we do. And so much so that we talked to them about having a community member on the Board of Governors. So, any questions about this?
And I guess I would put out if you have any questions and also if you have any concerns, especially from the board, because our work group is suggesting that we change our timeline. And so if, so we haven't, we've been in communication with the bar to let them know, this is what we're planning on doing, but I've waited to let them know because I wanted to first check in with the ATJ board if you have any concerns with sort of our adjusted timeline.
All right. Well, thank you both for that. Post-Goldmark forum update was going to be from Esperanza, but she is out sick. I will just say that we are having an event after the Goldmark lunch on Friday, February 16th. It is, I think, 2 to 4 p.m. And Bonnie, can you add kind of the substance of that?
Sure, yeah. It actually kind of dovetails well with what Dinah was just talking about, of working with community members more closely. We're going to host a panel of representatives from organizations that have been really trying to work hard at creating more community involvement in their organizations, and specifically by setting up sort of community advisory panels or similar types of groups. So there will be a representative from Team Child, Q Law, the Access to Justice Board, and maybe one other. I think we're still trying to recruit some panel members to talk about the process and what it's been like to set up those community groups within their organizations, and then hopefully also have some interactive time where folks who attend the forum or the panel can talk amongst themselves about work that they're doing within their own organization to try to set up similar types of groups. Vanna, I know you're going to be on the panel. I don't know if you want to share anything else. We haven't really started planning. We're still a little ways in some of the planning, but that's what we have initially set up.
Great. Thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing all of the people that I see in little boxes on my screen. Looking forward to being there with you in person at the Goldmark, and then please stay for our post-Goldmark event after that. So I believe next, former ATJ Chair Sal Mangia is here. There he is. Good morning, Sal.
Morning, Terry.
To talk to us about taxi cab.
Morning, all, and good to be back here. What I consider kind of one of my many homes, and good to see you all. Just to bring you up to date and kind of remember where we are on this. Maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, the Board of Governors, the WSBA Board of Governors, got together a task force to see whether WSBA could draft a policy on how it's going to deal with court-appointed boards. The ATJ board has had a pretty good relationship with the WSBA Board of Governors for the past few years, but there has been some tensions in the prior past, and other boards have had their tensions with the WSBA Board of Governors. So the WSBA Board of Governors thought it'd be a good idea to try to get a policy that would help guide everybody. So from the get-go, I was the representative of the ATJ board. And from the get-go, I made it clear to the WSBA, okay, this is your policy. We'll certainly have input, but it doesn't bind us. However, that kind of changed as we went through this because I think the WSBA Board of Governors realized that you can't bind us unless they have either our consent or unless the state Supreme Court binds us. And so what they proposing of doing is actually presenting this policy to the state Supreme Court. We've been working closely and we got to what was an agreed policy, at least the work group did. The committee then took it to the Board of Governors, and the Board of Governors had some concerns. The committee now has a new draft, which you all have in your working materials. And there are just two, what I consider substantive changes, and one I will advise this board, from my viewpoint, isn't a big substantive change. It deals with section 3.5 and just what the executive director of the WSBA has to do if she or he believes that a policy change that is going to be adopted by the WSBA Board of Governors will affect a board. If they do think it will affect a board, then they will give notice to the board in time before the final change is made. It kind of waters down, not really waters down, it lessens the responsibility, but I don't see a material effect on 3.5. So I don't, at least my recommendation to the board, accept that change. And there's some other minor changes, like I said. But the one change that I want to point out is 3.0, which has always been really the heart of what can be any kind of conflict, which is the independence of the board. I think I've always taken the position, and this board's always taken the position, which I think is an accurate position. This is a Washington State Supreme Court appointed board. You are appointed directly from the state Supreme Court, and you report directly to the state Supreme Court. However, the state Supreme Court has appointed or has directed the WSBA to administer all boards, including the ATJ board. And so that's where you get into conflict. And so it's always this independence. So if you look at 3.0 of your materials, you'll see that the proposed changes, the new language regarding the board, quote, they are independent from WSBA, which is fine. They are independent from the WSBA in that they, then it goes on and with the language that is already there, set their own priorities and policies and determine how to carry out their duties and functions. My concern is by adding in even that little phrase in that they, and I know I may be getting a little, I won't say paranoid, but a little concerned, and I don't like to over lawyer things. I always caution myself about that. But I do think it may, in effect, restrict in unintended ways what should be the full independence of this board. My suggestion to this board is that you go back with this counter proposal, and I'm hoping, Bonnie, you're taking this down, and I'll try to read it slowly. Instead of the language they have in here now, put in, they are independent from the WSBA, comma, they set their own priorities and goals, comma, and determine how to carry out their duties and functions as authorized by the Supreme Court. It's a very minor tweak, but I think, again, it maintains the full independence of this board and makes that clear to the WSBA. That's my proposal, but I am not a board member, and you all will have to decide what to do. Turning it back to you, Terry.
All right. Thank you, Sal. Questions for Sal or comments?
And Bonnie, I think you have that accurately written in the chat box.
My question, Sal, is when are they expecting a response from us?
I
a
think they
deadline?
next meet in March or February or March. I think before the next meeting of this board.
Before the next meeting of this board. Okay. Brent, you're on mute.
Sal, I just want to say thanks so much for your overview and thoughtful input. And Terry, can I just go ahead and make a motion to adopt Sal's proposal as an amendment?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a second? Mike is second. Any other comments? All right. Oh, Nick.
Sal, do you expect pushback on the change you're proposing?
I think there's probably a 60% chance of pushback, Nick.
Like the snow,
This
like
is
the
all-
snow forecast?
What's that?
Like the snow forecast? Is that
That's
what you said?
exactly.
All right. Without, I see no other comments or questions. So all in favor of the change as Sal has suggested? All right. It looks unanimous.
So Terry, just to make it clear that this board is accepting all the changes shown in materials with the one revision that was just passed, correct?
Correct.
Thank you all. I appreciate the direction.
Thank you, Sal.
Thank you, Sal.
For your continuing work on this.
Great. All right, I'll see y'all.
Bye. All right, continuing down the road of former ATJ chairs who have come back to be with us. We're very happy to have Francis Adewale here with Erin Lennon and Sarah Augustine. Happy to see all three of you to talk about what I just referred to as the Appellate project, but judicial branch budget proposal with barriers to accessing appellate courts. So.
Thank you, Terry. It's like we never left. All right. Thank you so much, ATJ Board. Thank you for welcoming us here today. We're here to ask for your support and letter of support. The leader of our group is Sarah Augustine, and I'm going to defer to her. I'm former chair, and Erin Lennon is also a member of the work group. So over to you, Sarah.
Thanks very much, Francis. It's just a joy to be here with you all this morning. I just want to begin sort of sharing what our mandate is, who we are, and where we come from. Some of you may remember, others it may be new to you. Our mandate is to identify barriers to justice for indigent residents who are facing the appellate system. And we engage in research, propose solutions in the appellate system beyond any one simple rule. So in a nutshell, that's our mandate. Just to give you a little background, this work, we were appointed by the Supreme Court, and this came out of the June 4th, 2020 letter committing the court to supporting rules that bring greater racial justice in the legal system. In January of 2022, Francis and I each received a letter from Chief Justice Gonzalez framing a request to form a working group. And then later in January, we received a letter from Justice Gordon MacLeod outlining our mandate. So what we're here to talk about today is a multi-year process that we're engaged in. And we're now asking for support from you in supporting the first step. So we are recommending a staged response with systemic solutions that are guided by those with lived experience. And so this is something you know very well about, and we're proposing systemic solutions that engage people with lived experience in a leadership role. And so our process is to use the Pathways to Action model, change ground in collaboration. So many of you are probably familiar with that also. But we're in stage one at this point. We are engaged in discovery and research. And so we are planning right now a research study and asking for your support. It's part of the Judicial Branch 2024 support budget or supplemental budget. And so we're asking for your support in this first stage. We're really querying the system to find out where important barriers are. And the next stage is in the next legislative session is reporting relevant findings and recommendations, and then appointing and forming the appellate litigants advisory board. And then finally in stage 3, developing an action plan that is led by an advisory board. But we're still just in stage 1. So our request to you is a letter of support that for the Washington State Judicial Branch 2024 supplemental budget, and specifically naming the Reduced Barriers to Appellate Access study. And so that study is the amount of money requested is in excess of $144,000. So it's a short-term study that will be presented in the next legislative session. So with that, I'd just like to open it up for questions and discussion. Oh, Francis, Aaron, any additional comments?
None
Okay,
from me.
great. Questions, comments?
So Sarah, I'm confused. Is this in, because your last line was, this is in the next legislative budget, or is it this budget?
This
Oh, it's this budget. Yes,
This budget.
Yeah.
Sorry, and sorry to be unclear. We have a staged approach. So
Right.
this is the first stage. We're really asking you for a letter for this first stage. And of course, we will want to partner with you as we move forward, because we're doing something that's quite unusual. We're trying to form a working group that includes people with lived experience to recommend changes to our appellate system.
Yeah, Terry, it's included in the judicial branch budget as rolled out by the governor's budget is included in there and is part of the request. But specifically, we have been outreaching Supreme Court boards and commissions and communities to support this particular budget, because the lesson we learned from the race equity initiative of the Supreme Court is that we have to get the community involved in finding solutions to the problem. Lawyers don't have all the answers. I'm sorry to say that. But so this is what we're doing. The first stage of the process is to be able to gather the data and identify the problems. And we have a proposed letter of support that I believe we have provided, but the ATJ Board can draft its own letter. By the way, WSBA, Washington State Bar Association, has also provided a letter of support, but we value the Access to Justice Board letter, as well as the Minority and Justice Commission's letter, more than anything else, because this issue is really directly in your bailiwick as access to justice really issue. So we would really appreciate your support, and we want to be coming back here frequently also to provide input for you on what we are doing on the process and to learn, because like I'm looking at the ATJ board, I am so grateful that we have moved so far away from what used to be ATJ board. It's so much community impact on the board now that is so important that we check in with the board. And so you're going to see more of us as we go on in this process.
And am I right that it is not a bill, it's a budget?
It's a budget, yes.
Okay, so there's no bill attached. Mike?
So I think actually I think we should, as an ATJ board, support the work and submit a letter. And I think this aligns with the ATJ's principles around centering around community who are most impacted by the legal system. And so I think that I would support this, and I think it completely aligns with how we are moving forward. And I agree, Francis, when I started on the board, it had a very different feel, a different conversation, a different makeup than we are today. And I think we are much better for that.
Yep.
I think we are much centered around people with lived experience, whether it's developing a policy around how to compensate people with lived experience and how do we bring people in instead of excluding people out. So I would support a the ATJ to submit a letter to support a budget appropriations for stage 1 of this project. I don't know what the proper language I should be using for the motion, but it gives me the kind of the gist. I do think that I did see the template letter, and I think one of the things I think will be really important for us as a board to think about is like, how do we actually talk about our work and the importance of ATJ in that letter, and how our mission aligns with the purpose of this project going forward. So I love the template. I think it also needs to include like, what is our purpose and what is our role on the ATJ board. But thank you, Francis, Aaron, and Sarah, for your work on this.
Thank you, Mike.
Before I call on you, Brent, I think as a friendly amendment, I think the board gives the chair the authority to write the letter based on our conversation. So to incorporate that into it. So I think, Mike, that's how that gets covered. Brent.
I was just going to second Mike's motion. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any other comment or question before we take a vote? Oh, Vanna.
I just wanted to say thank you because that appellate court system is very much needed, just like how Black people are over criminalized. Southeast Asians are too, and miracles are happening every day, and it's because of this system. And I do believe there is justice out there. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Vanna. That's really, really meaningful to me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Vanna. So, all right, board members, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of sending a letter, raise your hand. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion passes. All right. So we will get on that and send the letter to the chairs of the Senate and the House Appropriations Committees.
Thank you, Terry. Love you all.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everyone. So good to see you.
Good to see all three of you. All right, now continuing the thread of what's going on at the legislature, we can turn this over to Antonio Ginata.
Terry, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Antonio. I'm the policy director at Columbia Legal Services, and my job is to talk about the legislative session in 5 to 10 minutes. Overall, we are on day 12. We're a fifth of the way through a 60-day session. Things are moving at a very rapid pace. People want to get out of here right at day 60 and go back to campaign and back to politics. So feeling the big urgency to move forward. So folks know some key cutoff deadlines. It's January 31st that policy bills need to be out during a short session. So if the thing that you are supporting that is a policy measure isn't out by the 31st, most likely it's not going anywhere. February 5th, right afterwards, is the fiscal cutoff. So those are two big ones to start winnowing down the field in terms of what bills are going to make it. When I have come to the ATJ board before, I've always felt a little bit uncomfortable talking about CLS priorities and taking up my 10 minutes. I thought I wanted to do something just a slightly different, which was because I'm tracking a lot of CLS priority bills, I have to sit in hearings where other bills are discussed. And what I did is just track the hearings I've heard where members of the Alliance for Equal Justice were testifying on a bill that weren't CLS, because it just shows the strength of our presence down here in Olympia. So I just want to run through those just in case you wanted to, and this is by far not a comprehensive list of all the engagement. It's just what I got to see during my time in hearings over the last 12 days. So the Lavender Rights Project testified on the Guaranteed Basic Income bill. That's Representative Barry's bill. I had Team Child and Legal Counsel for Youth and Children testified on a bill related to Senator Trudeau's bill on releasing juveniles from juvenile detention facility. I saw Disability Rights Washington raise some concerns about Senator Peterson's guardianship bill. That's 5825. Civil Survival was present at a very important and contentious bill related to the rights of folks in prison to vote. If you don't know, Maine and Vermont have never taken away the franchise for people, regardless of whether they're in confinement. And Representative Simmons is seeing if we can try to do that here in Washington. NJP was invited to 2 different hearings that I got to catch, one on court interpreters, House Bill 2006, and then on medical debt garnishment, that's Representative Riccelli's Bill 2119. And that's definitely not it, not all of it. But like I said, those are the ones that I saw. And I know, boy, what's coming up. We've got some big fights. There is an effort to create more restrictions around charity care by asking expansive residency questions. That's a Senator Cleveland bill. So the Northwest Health Law Advocates is working on that alongside us at NJP and trying to think through what the impact would be of that bill. The Consumer Law Center is going to be fighting some bills that take away the right or create rights under the Consumer Protection Act, but give sole enforcement to the Attorney General instead of individual consumers. We don't want to see that. Yeah, and Fair Work Center is working on our unemployment bill. We're trying to create an unemployment system that mirrors the federal system for undocumented workers. It's a big, tough lift with a big fiscal note in a year where big fiscal notes on new projects aren't really looked on fondly. So that's a high bar for us this session, but we know it's a long-term effort. Only one state in the country has actually created such a system, and it was a coming together of very unique circumstances to allow Colorado to set that up. So anyways, we'll be working on that as well. In terms of Columbia Legal Services and our priority bills, we are supporting a jail oversight bill that will be heard next Monday. We're supporting the rent stabilization measures. These are big, comprehensive bills that have a lot of tenant protections, including making some linkages between the Consumer Protection Act and the Residential Landlord Tenant Act that we'll be supporting and are supporting. That's House Bill 2114 by Representative Alvarado. We have a bill that's trying to improve the collection of data around farm worker wages that's sponsored by Representative Ortiz-Self that had its hearing earlier this week, and a bill to make prison phone calls free. That's Senator Hansen's bill 6021. We're excited to push that one forward. A lot of these bills are moving in terms of the policy, but we're just waiting to see we're absolutely sure will be excessive and inflated fiscal notes that will be the efforts by the agencies to try to kill these bills. So lots of work still to do under a very compressed timeline. We've got one bill that still hasn't gotten scheduled for a hearing. We're trying to codify our success in the state Supreme Court on issues related to vehicle residency, the Stephen Long versus Seattle case. We want to get that codified, so we're trying to find time in the House Transportation Committee to get that heard. That's just a lot of stuff that's happening in a very constricted timeline, as I said. My invitation to you is please, if there's a particular bill that you have questions about, and if I don't have an answer for you now, send me an email and I'm happy to track it down. Things that should be on our radar. I'd love to be your conduit to make sure that we're catching these things. I'm trying to catch as much as I can, but it's a little bit difficult. So I appreciate all your help there as well. I'll put my email in the chat and please do reach out and happy to answer any questions if you've got them now.
Are there questions for Antonio? Vanna?
Actually, I don't have a question, but I just loved hearing the bill where trying to get the phone calls for free for the inmates. That would decrease a lot of stress and bring more people together. That is a barrier for many people. And I just appreciate hearing that. Thank you so much.
Working with a good coalition with some national partners as well. We don't want to see DOC come out and say that there's a profit incentive to keep people from talking to their family members and their children, which would, delay and, impact re-entry into communities, into the families. It makes no sense to be charging what Securus is currently charging for video calls, phone calls, email messages. I mean, it makes no sense. So looking forward to keep fighting that fight.
And along those lines, and this is something I heard on NPR a few years ago, but that company, when you sign up with that company, does that mean that you must preclude in-person visits? Because that seemed to me to be going on, that
not exactly, Terry, not at least in this state, but there have been other states that have been moving towards getting rid of in-person visitation in favor of the fact, saying that video is sufficient. There were some conversations around that related to COVID and using COVID as the, as an excuse to get rid of in-person. But actually, we have language specific in the bill that says that, no provision of free phone calls should be used to limit in any way in-person visitation. That's not a direction we're looking at.
Great. Oh, I wouldn't think you were. I wouldn't think so. Other questions for Antonio? I have two. One is based on the previous conversation we had about writing to the chairs of the two appropriations committees. When would be a good time for them to receive that? You said that appropriations cutoff is February 5th. So it seems to me they're going to be working on the budget last week in January, first week in February.
We, for budget provisos, it is our understanding, we have received some notice that legislators have a deadline, at least in the House, of on the 27th, I think it's next Friday, to get their budget requests in. We've also heard that the Senate has a similar deadline and also some even tighter limits in the number of requests that legislators can make to put things into the budget. So that's my long way of saying get that thing in now, is my suggestion. Before the 27th for sure.
And then my other question is, the governor's three priorities this year were to address behavioral health, the fentanyl crisis, and homelessness. How's the governor doing?
I always, it's always good to hear the message from the governor. And I know this is very interesting in being his last year, as to try to figure out what his legacy efforts are. I think there are narratives that he's going to have to respond to anyways related to the political season, public safety. There's, money in for providing more funding for law enforcement. It's going to impact the criminal legal system reforms that we're pushing. I don't see much of a path this year, but in terms of like going all in on housing, I see that him and the legislature are working well together on continuing to push that. So I do see some big reforms in housing being things that legislators want to do, the governor wants as legacy, and can be good things to run on in November for those who are still running.
For those who are running. All right. Any other questions for Antonio? Bryn.
Terry, this is more to respond to a piece of your question on the behavioral health front, because I follow the healthcare bills. There have been attempts to address the behavioral health provider shortages by creating new kinds of licensure and pathways, but those are encountering opposition from behavioral health groups because, well, there's a variety of different reasons, but it doesn't look like it's going to be smooth sailing. And at least from the provider perspective, we're really just trying to create more workforce pathways at this point. But it doesn't look like it'll pass this session necessarily.
Thanks, Bryn, for that update. All right. Well, Antonio, we appreciate in a 60-day session, every minute is precious. So we appreciate your time.
Thanks for inviting me. Please reach out. I'm happy to help. Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right. So next on our agenda, Alex, welcome.
Hi, everyone. I have a much shorter update than Antonio just gave, but I really appreciated his comprehensive update. This current legislative session, the EJC is not pursuing a request for basic civil legal aid funding. But we are, however, laying the groundwork for the next biennium request. So we're currently in the process of trying to set up meetings with legislators. We'll be reaching out to stakeholders in the next couple of months for feedback. And we're looking forward to working with Sarah and the OCLA team on OCLA's future request. So we're kind of putting all of our focus into the next biennium. But we're not doing nothing right now. We're laying the groundwork. So keep a lookout for the next stakeholder meeting request. We haven't scheduled anything yet, but I think we're looking at after session, but probably like right at the end of February or beginning of March. On the federal side, we're looking forward to our annual trip to DC in April to lobby for increased funding for the Legal Services Corporation. But yeah, that's it for now. And I mean, we'll have more updates when we meet next time. And we'll probably have received some feedback by then. So
Great, thank you. And again, the next meeting will be on the same day as the Goldmark lunch on February 16th. All right, Cesar, I see you. Can you explain to us what's going on in the other Washington?
Good morning. Thank you, Terry. Yeah, well, I don't know if that's possible, but I can tell you, no. Well, as I think everybody knows from the news, they managed to kick the can down the road again to early March, which means it will be a full 5+ months into the fiscal year before there's an actual budget for the fiscal year, the federal fiscal year. It's just keep repeating. I guess better late than never. In any event, the framework that seems to be prevailing would result when it comes to the Legal Services Corporation appropriation in flat funding. That is the framework that was negotiated back in the summer between McCarthy and Biden in any event. So for us, that's really good news because some of the proposals that members of the House were putting forward were talking about reductions in discretionary spending of anywhere from 13 to 25%. So that's not a good scenario. Obviously flat funding, 20% or so of our budget is federal, and flat funding doesn't cover the increased costs and so on. But as I said, it's way better than the alternatives. So that's it on the federal funding front. I don't know if anyone has any questions. It's pretty status quo for no federal budgets again.
It speaks for itself.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Cesar. Are there any questions? All right. Sarah, on the state side.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So due to the nature of this being a supplemental budget year, OCLA has a fairly modest budget request this year for civil legal aid. But one is to directly address the drastic increase we've seen in eviction filings, really in every part of the state. So we have requested an additional approximately $3 million for fiscal year 24 and 25 to add 10 new FTE lines for the right to counsel. And that will really get us closer to covering the increases that we've seen in filings and get us caught up the backlogs that different jurisdictions are seeing in the state. So that's one of our asks. And then our other ask is related to Blake. So the way that the legislature has allocated funding related to Blake work is has been a annual allocation. We have to ask for the renewal, another year of funding of what we have been getting, and we have asked for 2 additional attorney FTEs to address legal financial obligations and specifically handle cases with the newly set up refund bureau through the administrative office of the courts. So those are the 2 requests we have. As Alex said, we are looking forward to hearing from stakeholders in this space, in the EJ space, and all of around what type of ask we do in the biennial budget, and look forward to hearing, sharing what we're thinking about and hearing others are thinking about for across the state. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Sarah. Vanna, question.
Thank you. I've been asking around regarding about the Blake case. I hear that, it's only fair to refund those with the possession charges, right? But what about the manufacturing charges? Because I feel like I deserve a refund too. If people with just possessions get a refund, can I get a refund? And all those community service hours that I did?
Yeah, I mean, I am not an expert in this substantive area, Bob, but I do believe that Blake only covers possession. And there would have to be some other type of change in law to cover side of possession, but definitely yeah, understand the frustration.
Thank you.
Other questions for Sarah? All right. Thank you, Sarah. And welcome to your first session.
Thanks.
Is anyone, Alex, are you here on behalf of Caitlin and the LFW? Yeah.
Yeah, something came up. So I am available to give the LFW and campaign update.
Great.
Cool. So this has been kind of a big year for LFW on the grant side. This year, LFW is awarding nearly 30 million in grants. We are awarding $775,000 total to 9 amazing accelerator grantees. The accelerator grants are one-time grants designed to accelerate time-sensitive civil justice work and launch impactful projects. And for the 2024-2025 grant cycle, we're awarding 27,338,000 to 29 partnership grantees. And that's including 5 new grantees, which is Fair Work Center, Lavender Rights Project, the Seattle Clemency Project, Q Law Foundation, and the Way to Justice. And then lastly, for 2024, LFW was able to increase the grant pool for our race equity grants to the highest level yet, which is $1 million. And so that expansion will allow for $50,000 grants to organizations that are doing critical race equity work across Washington. And the race equity grant application cycle actually just opened up this week. And so those applications are due April 15th. And when I'm done talking, I can put the link to the race equity grant applications in the chat. So if anyone has any questions about our grant cycles or anything related to that, you let me know, or you can email Caitlin. But on the campaign side, our development team and our amazing board members have worked really hard. We're approaching the end of our King County Law Firm campaign. I believe in about another month, we'll have the final results from that campaign. And then aside from that, we're really looking forward to the 38th annual Goldmark luncheon on February 16th. So if you haven't already registered, I'm going to put a link to the registration page in the chat. And then we're really looking forward to the ATJ board forum afterwards. So I hope you can all attend. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know now, or you can email Caitlin.
Any questions for Alex? All right. Okay, well, at this point, the only thing left on our agenda are announcements and other updates. So any other announcements or updates? Okay. Those are the links in the chat for the Goldmark. All right. Well, good to see everyone. And looking forward to seeing you in person out of the little boxes on February 16th at the Goldmark lunch. Okay, take care, everyone.